Nintendo is oftentimes viewed as an innovator in the gaming industry, and rightfully so. They pioneered a lot of things like Z-targeting, motion controls on console games, and they're partially responsible for the Metroidvania genre. And while I do think they deserve a lot of credit in this regard, I also think it's important to note how often Nintendo takes inspiration from other games and other developers. I'd even go a step further and say a lot of their best ideas come from when they take established ideas and either fix them or put their own unique spin on it. So I want to give some examples of when Nintendo has explicitly taken inspiration from other games, and we'll get into some more subtle or unconfirmed examples also. Let's start with the game called ARMS. Now, if you don't know, ARMS was a fighting game that Nintendo released in 2017 for the Nintendo Switch. Mechanically, ARMS shares a lot in common with mecha arena fighters like Virtual On by Sega and Gundam Extreme Versus by Bandai Namco. In an interview with Famitsu, Nintendo was asked about how they would explain ARMS' gameplay style, and they said, "There are games like the Virtual On and the Gundam Versus series that use this kind of camera, and some people have been reminded of them. We spent a lot of time playing games like those, so there are probably some influences from them in ARMS." In fact, the motion control scheme in ARMS almost directly simulates the twin stick control scheme used in Virtual On. To guard in Virtual On, for example, you push both twin sticks inward towards each other. And to guard in ARMS, you do the exact same thing but with Joy-Cons. Virtual On mechs also have a left hand weapon and a right hand weapon. ARMS takes the same approach and lets you combine different weapons on your right arm and left arm. The Metroid Prime series is also another major example of Nintendo games pulling influences from other games. In this interview with IGN, the director for Metroid Prime Hunters talks about Nintendo's NST division being created for the purpose of bringing Western influences to the series. Tanabe says, "I thought about what kind of game we should make for the Nintendo DS. And after making the plans for the game, I contacted NST with the idea in mind and let them develop it." Richard Verodi says, and your next question is probably going to be, why didn't NCL make the game itself, right? NST is set up as a first-party developer in Redmond, and we're essentially the Western version of NCL. So we're going to bring the Western ideals, styles, and presentation. I think that's the goal of NST and why it was created, to bring American influences to life under the Nintendo umbrella with the guidance of creators like Mr. Tanabe. And the influence is very apparent across the series. Metroid Prime Hunters has a mechanic called missile jumping, where you can increase the height of your jump by firing your missile weapon at the ground. This mechanic was popularized by Quake 1 on PC, and later became a mechanic that you see in many arena-based first-person shooters. The Quake influence is also very apparent in the online multiplayer mode for Metroid Prime Hunters. It has jump pads scattered throughout the map, which was a design element popularized by Quake 3 Arena, and it had an emphasis on high-speed movement. The main Metroid Prime games also took a lot of influences from the Halo series. Paul Tozor had this to say about working on Metroid Prime 2 and 3.
There are influences of Halo in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption because a couple designers on the team were big Halo fans, and that, as I understand it, caused some problems with Tanabe-san because, of course, he did not care about Halo. But like the first Dark Samus battle was our attempt to create a boss encounter that felt more like a typical, Western shooter game. It felt more like a Call of Duty or something like that, and give more of that feeling. We didn't try to sell to Tanabe as, oh, these other games do this. It was much more of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a boss who did these things, and we'll try it and see if it works.
The Xenoblade series has also taken inspiration from Bethesda. In a series of internal interviews done back in 2012, Inaba from Monolith Soft said, "I'd like to make an HD game that will wow the players. I want to show that Japan can still keep up with the USA when it comes to next-gen technology. Our goal is to become something like the developers of the Fallout series, Bethesda Softworks. Monolith Soft then went on to develop Xenoblade X for the Wii U, and this game has a lot of Western RPG DNA with a less linear, more open world map design and more choice-driven side quests that you'd see in games like Fallout. For example, there's a side quest in Xenoblade X called Lakeside Getaway, where you have to check in on a water purification site. When you get to the site, there are monsters attacking. You defeat the monsters and find out only one employee survived. They say thank you, and then they tell you they'll take a shower to clean up. And from this point, you can allow them to take a shower, or you can stop them. If you allow them to take the shower, they get turned into a monster that you have to kill. If you stop them from taking a shower, you'll be able to review the camera footage with them and find out that the water was turning employees into monsters. This style of side quest design is inspired by the types of side quests you see in the Fallout series, where different routes have permanent consequences on the world around you. But that's not all. I want to go one step further here and point out that one of the biggest elements of Fallout 3's story was Project Purity, which was a project about purifying the radiated water in the wasteland.
But the Bible passage your mother loves so much? Free, clean water for everyone. What a difference it could make in the lives of everyone here in the waste.
It may or may not be a stretch, but I do think it's possible that the water purification side quest in Xenoblade X is actually a more direct homage to Fallout, but that may or may not be a stretch. Either way though, I still think it's very apparent how Monolith Soft is inspired by Bethesda in some aspects. Now, these are some of the more obvious, explicit ways that Nintendo has been influenced by other developers, but there are also cases that aren't as obvious, or rather, there are cases that aren't confirmed, but you can reasonably trace back to other games or other developers. Tears of the Kingdom, for example, came out in same with Breath of the Wild and the Ubisoft-style towers in the open world, for example. Splatoon series also has a lot of implicit influences from other games, including a horde mode that was popularized by Gears of War 2, a perk system that was popularized by Call of Duty 4, and a battle pass system that came later in Splatoon 3, which is inspired by a bunch of games that are out these days, right? Now, I can honestly say that Splatoon is less shy about wearing its influences on its sleeve. On top of all that, the series was created by the Nintendo Garage Initiative. This was an initiative started by Nintendo around the Wii U era to foster a younger generation of game developers. So it's not surprising to see more modern influences pop up in the series. So yeah, Nintendo is a very innovative company, but a big part of what they do is also putting a Nintendo spin on established concepts, and I think that's pretty cool too. So, do you have any other examples of Nintendo taking inspiration or influence from other developers? Comment if you have thoughts, support if you like, subscribe to support. It's GK, peace out.